Good day, everyone. The 2024-25 migration program allocations for all the states, ACT and Northern Territory have been released by the Government of Australia. In today's podcast, we will look at what these numbers look like and touch upon some key things that applicants need to know about the General Skill Migration Program and State Nominated Migration Program. And with me in the studio to talk about all that is Amitava Deb. Welcome, Amitava.
Good morning, Arun. How are you? How is everyone?
I'm well, Amitava. You've had a busy morning today.
Yes. But it's okay. It's normal. Let's get through this podcast.
Yes, so the DHA has released the allocations for all the states, ACT and Northern Territory.
Mm-hmm.
So for Subclass 190, the total allocations are 16,500 places.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for 491, we have 9,700 places.
That's right.
Let's look at the program allocations for all the states and go over them quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Starting with ACT.
ACT has 1,800 allocations, out of which 1,000 for 190, 800 for 491. New South Wales has 5,000 nominations, of which 3,000 for 190 and 2,000 for 491. If we talk about Victoria, it's 3,000 for 190 and 2,000 for 491. So there's a drop in Victoria. Last year, Victoria had slightly more allocations than New South Wales. Northern Territory has a larger allocations, 1,600. Equally shared between 190 and 491, 800 each. Queensland, there has been a big drop. It's less than Northern Territory this time, and it is 1,200. Again, equally divided between 190 and 491, 600 each. I suspect Queensland there will be a lot of focus on onshore applicants. There's always the priority onshore. Those who are onshore, they should not be disadvantaged. Those who have been living and committing to the state, that is the general idea. South Australia, 3,800 nominations, quite a lot, out of which 3,000 are for 190 and 800 for 491. So in the past, people have been applying for 491 mostly for South Australia because the allocations were more for 491, I mean. However, this time there's a lot of allocations for 190. So this is something to keep in mind when applying to that state. Tasmania, they're opening tomorrow, 1st of August. Tasmania has a lot of allocations again this time, 2,100 for Subclass 190 and 760 for Subclass 491. I have a few clients in Tasmania ready to apply tomorrow, eagerly waiting. They have been living there for a while, so I'll be busy tomorrow. Western Australia, 5,000 allocations, out of which 3,000 for 190 and 2,000 for Subclass 491.
Now, are all the states accepting applications, both onshore and offshore?
Right now, the only one that is kind of quasi-open is Northern Territory. Northern Territory opened we're still in July, so this month. And they opened briefly for offshore and they have closed. I already lodged the applications for a few for Northern Territory from offshore. Onshore is already open. Now, for offshore, one has to be reminded that there are two criteria. One is it must be on the list, Northern Territory list for offshore. And number two, they must have at least 2 years of experience recorded or claimed on their EOI for that occupation, offshore. Okay. And of course, this limitation does not apply if they have relatives in Northern Territory. If someone has a relative, it's called chain migration, then all the occupations are eligible. So,
okay, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
For any of the states, Are you aware if any new occupation groups have been added to the skilled occupation list for the 24-25 migration program?
Well, some states have separate occupation list, others do not. Victoria and New South Wales do not necessarily have occupation lists. They go by the SOL. There has been new occupations added to TOSL, Tasmania occupation list. Queensland has an occupation list. I have not seen the list in details. I don't know whether they have added new ones or not. Western Australia, they have their list published. So we have, it's just a matter of going through and finding out which occupations have been added, which ones are removed. It's not always mentioned explicitly which ones are added, but for Tasmania, we can find on the website which ones have been added.
Will this be available or published on the individual state websites?
The list will be, but one has to go through the list. It doesn't matter whether something has been added or not or removed. As long as your occupation is on the list, that's good. Go and apply. For Western Australia, there is one catch. If the occupation is there are two streams, Stream 1 and Stream 2. A lot of people get confused about these two different streams. One stream, Stream 1, is where you, in both the streams, you need to have a job offer if you have to apply for 190. If you do not have a job offer, you can apply for 491. But one of the streams, you must have certain years of experience. So that will be available on the website.
A lot of people are unaware of how state nomination works. They think once they lodge their EOI, they will get the invitation.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, every state has a different rule. I'll go through the rules for each of these states one by one. So can you hear me? Yeah. So let's go through ACT. ACT has a process known as Canberra Matrix. So in order to be invited, or a lot of people use the term pre-invitation, I prefer to use the term selection. So in order to be selected by ACT, you need to lodge a Canberra Matrix. And the Canberra Matrix goes by certain scores which are different to the point score. And you can go there and find out how Canberra Matrix ranking has been working over the last 1 year. And then you can figure out whether you have a chance based on the past trend. So Canberra Matrix for ACT. There are two Canberra Matrix, one for onshore and one for offshore. One must remember that when you are in Australia and in living, working or studying in a state, you are not allowed to apply to any other state other than Western Australia, who do not have any restriction. I'll come to that. Next one is New South Wales. New South Wales, for 190, you need to be invited to be able to apply for New South Wales. What it means is that you lodge expression of interest and wait. The New South Wales Business Innovation Team will select from the pool of EOIs where New South Wales has been indicated as your state to apply on their portal for selection. For 491, however, there are certain streams, and in one of the streams, you can apply directly when they open, and they will give all the details when they open. You can pay around, last year it was $800. You pay $800 and apply for 491, provided your occupation is on the regional list, regional New South Wales list. For 190, there is, last year there wasn't any list. You were able to select all the occupations. All the occupations were eligible. So for 491, it's a little rigid, strict. To be selected for New South Wales, you must be living and working in regional New South Wales if you are living in Australia. If you're living in Sydney and you want to apply, you could not apply for regional New South Wales. Not allowed, because the demand is very high. Northern Territory, the next one, Northern Territory, to apply on the portal, they have their application portal where you can register or have your migration agent apply on your behalf directly by paying a fee. The fee is around $600. And then it will go through the process of going through your documentation and check whether you meet the requirements that they had documented, and then issue invitation. Here, the invitation is based on first in, first out. So basically, it's like a queue. It's not so much based on how many points you've got. So if you're in a hurry, if you rush, you might be able to grab a position. They are going to open for offshore on 12th of August. Onshore is open. Queensland, again, Queensland is based on selection from the EOI pool. You could not apply to Queensland until they invite you from the pool, from the EOI pool, and say that yes, it seems you meet the eligibility requirement. Now prove it and apply. So usually for regional, you need to be working in regional Queensland for a certain period of time. And for 190, you need to have been working in Queensland for, I guess it was six months or 12 months. But we have to go and check. So those are the requirements you must meet. And when you're pre-selected, or when you're selected or pre-invited, you need to provide evidence that you meet the requirements, and then they will invite you. South Australia, in the past, they had the ROI method. ROI means, apart from EOI, you have to register an interest. But then they scrapped it. All you need to do is lodge an expression of interest and wait to be selected. Tasmania has a registration of interest gateway. In the gateway, when you apply, and based on the published requirements, they will evaluate your profile based on what you enter, and then give you a ticket. So there are 3 tickets that are issued to you. They call them tickets. If you are given a gold pass, you'll be able to lodge an application for nomination immediately. Usually, long-term residents in Tasmania, they call it established resident pathway, they will be able to lodge immediately. If you're given a green pass, you will not be able to lodge an application straight away, but may be invited to apply for nomination in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And if you're given an orange pass, you may be invited for nomination within the next 6 months. So obviously, if you get an orange pass, that means you need to wait. Otherwise, you are pretty good. Yeah. The nomination, the registration on Tasmania Gateway is valid for 6 months. After 6 months, you have to reapply. Okay. Same with Canberra Metrics. The Canberra Metrics expires after 6 months, so one has to lodge again. I think we've got now Victoria.
Yeah.
Victoria, one has to lodge ROI, registration of interest, apart from lodging the expression of interest. After lodging the ROI, the Victoria team will check and invite. So usually once a month, they will invite you to apply for Victoria with the documentation, so they can evaluate and see if you can be invited.
So explain why state nomination does not guarantee grant of visa.
So state nomination has two parts. I assume you're asking about the approval of state nomination?
Yeah, so if an applicant puts in their papers and they receive an invitation to apply from the state, a lot of people think that they're going to get the visa, for sure. But they don't realize that the visa is actually issued by the Department of Home Affairs.
So when someone is selected by the state, they have to provide documentation in support of the claim that they meet the criteria. They are selected because they have put in the EOI or ROI or Canberra metrics indicating that they have met the requirements. If they meet the requirements, then the state will most likely accept and then send the notification to Home Affairs for invitation. So it's just a process. And then Home Affairs will invite you to apply for the visa application. So until the whole process is done, one doesn't get a visa. There is this documentation verification along the way. There is also police checks and medicals along the way.
Does one need to lodge separate applications for 190 and 491 for all the states?
So one mistake a lot of people do is in the same EOI. Okay, so when you say application, I'm assuming you mean expression of interest?
Yeah, expression of interest, yes.
So when someone lodges expression of interest, a lot of people choose any state. So then they exclude themselves from all the states, because no state will like to invite someone who is indicating that he can go anywhere. So one must lodge specifically one EOI for every state, for every subclass. Now, some states do not like you to lodge for two subclasses at the same time. New South Wales says if you are selecting 190 and 491, both, we will consider your expression of interest not valid for New South Wales. So I think it is important to first check whether their occupation is on the state list for that occupation, and B, whether it is under 190 or 491, and accordingly make a decision.
So which state would just require you to lodge just one EOI for both subclasses? Is there any state there?
There's no such requirement. It's up to us how we lodge. States require you to lodge an expression of interest indicating a preference. It is us who have to provide a preference in the expression of interest, which allows you to choose more than one subclass. The best practice is to choose only one subclass in one EOI. You can lodge thousands of EOIs. There is no limitation. Hence, make each EOI unique, specific to a particular subclass for a particular state.
Is there a difference in nomination criteria between subclass 190 and subclass 491?
Yeah, again, it is different based on the state. Usually, it is very similar, but in New South Wales, they have different criteria for 491. Yeah, for Australian Capital Territory, it is the same application. So criteria are largely guided by what is documented for each of these subclasses, for each state.
Now, some states would have a nomination application fee. Is this fee refundable?
No, it's not refundable. The only state that has no nomination fee is Victoria. All other states charge, and there is no refund.
Is there a validity on the nomination that you receive from the state?
Okay, I'm trying to understand this. Nomination, you mean?
Suppose we lodge the application for New South Wales for 190.
So we lodge the EOI or the application. There are several steps to it. So first we lodge the expression of interest. Then we receive an email saying you are selected. Then we lodge the nomination application. Then we receive an email saying your nomination has been approved. Then we receive another email from Home Affairs saying you have been selected to apply for the visa. And that...
So the second part is where you get the invitation from the state saying that we would like you to apply for the visa.
So first you'll be selected by the state to apply for nomination. That request is usually valid only for 2 weeks. Then once the nomination is accepted, after you have applied, then the request or the skill select invitation to apply for visa comes from Home Affairs, and that expires in 60 days.
If you are granted a visa, can the applicant find work outside of their nominated state and transfer their nomination to another state?
That's a very touchy question. A state has given nomination thinking that you will be living in their state. So if you ask them for a transfer, they will not allow. In fact, it's not something that one should do. Having said that, many applicants who have been granted Subclass 190, they have moved to another state because the Home Affairs visa grant does not have any condition that binds them to any state. Except that in the situation where it is Subclass 491, in Subclass 491 as well, there is no limitation or there is no binding to a particular state, but the condition is that you must live and work in a regional area.
So for Subclass 190, is there a possibility that a state, after nominating an applicant, can withdraw their nomination because now the applicant is looking to move to another state?
No, just because they are looking, they cannot withdraw the nomination. If they want, they can try and find out where the applicant is living, because the commitment is for 2 years. And within those 2 years, if they find, it's very hypothetical, if they find that the applicant is living and working in another state, they can cancel the nomination, which will cancel their visa. Having said that, no state will do that, I feel. They have never done it. They do not have the resources to do their own work. So it's a futile exercise. Why will they go and start chasing people who have not really lived in the state? It's just an onus on the applicant. It's something that they have to accept and pursue. That they are morally bound by that state. They have accepted, and it's really up to them whether they wish to fulfill their obligation. They have signed a declaration.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you for this valuable discussion.
Thank you.
I hope to all our listeners this was very, very valuable. So thank you for tuning in, folks. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Arun.
Yeah, goodbye. Thanks, Amitava.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.